Hello, welcome to this short introduction to Right to Publish course for fall 2025. I'm Christina Quinn, the director of CSU Rights, and I'll be joined behind the scenes by Kimmy Conroe, who will be lending support to this course, particularly with the Google class interface. So just a little bit about CSU Rights. You may already be familiar, but for those of you who are not, we are a career span writing program, meaning that we focus on basically the professional writing of researchers and scholars across the career span from early to later stages, and thinking about how it is that writers struggle throughout our careers in various ways and what our needs might be. We address those as areas of space, time, energy, momentum, style, and collaboration. And we use research-backed materials and support, and we build out webinars, retreats, and other ways that you can jump in and have a writing community and some just additional support and guidance along the way. The Right to Publish course is one of the more substantive kind of and structured events that we have each year. And the Mondays sessions, these are short, they're an hour long, and we will run from the beginning of the semester through to the end of the semester. It runs as a course. We will record the workshops, and we do not record the writing labs, but that is a kind of change of from what we've done in the years past. What we found was that if we had topics built out in webinars for 12 weeks in a row, conceptually, that was a lot for people to be taking on as a non-credit course. And so we figured that we could fine-tune and kind of consolidate some of those topics into 6 courses or 6 webinars, excuse me, and then build in some writing lab time for folks as well. So we have not run with this particular framing of Right to Publish before, but we have run this particular course now for 5, 6 years. So the information sheet, you'll have access to this through the Google course, and it should also be on your Outlook invite. So when you register for the course at the CSU Rights website, you should then, within 24 hours or so, receive an Outlook invitation that will include things like the Google link for the course. It'll also include the Zoom link for our webinars and our writing labs, and just some additional information. The course itself, we run Mondays from 3 to 3:50 p.m. Mountain Time. And there are additional resources that you can take advantage of that are on Mondays, for example, like Data Cohort, that dissertation and thesis accountability program runs on Mondays as well, right before Right to Publish. And so some people have found that advantageous to be able to jump in and have some writing time and through the dissertation and thesis accountability cohort, and then to jump in for a quick webinar and conversation for Right to Publish. Just note that there's also a certificate that's attached with this course. It is again non-credit, so you need to complete 80% of the course, and then just let us know that you're on the certificate track. It may be, however, if you're taking this course, you're jumping in for the information itself and you're not actively writing an article, you might not want to do that. And so that's fine too. Most people actually don't do the certificate. They're here for information and community. So the schedule itself, as I mentioned, every other week we have a topical webinar. Those will be recorded and they will be posted. So if you can't attend each week, you will have access to that information and those conversations. Next week is Writing for Publication, the big picture. So we'll open that one up as a broader webinar, and anyone who's interested in learning a little bit more about how to write for publication. That's kind of the big picture of it. Then as we move through into the semester, we'll cover things like reverse outlining and strategies for identifying how it is that you structure out your articles. We'll talk about abstract writing. Those two work really nicely hand in hand. We have Kalita Thomas from the libraries coming in to talk about open access and ORCID. Super helpful for us to understand in relation to the work that we are putting out there in the world and how do we want it published and how can we plan for open access publication if that's something that we're looking for. We will also talk about literature reviews and feedback and getting connected with others in the field, what it is that they say and what it is that I say. We'll talk about the openings of your research papers and then the closings of them. Those are two big prime real estate areas for being able to grab and kind of hold on to your readers. What we're going for is how can we get the value of our work amplified in those spaces so that then our work is then more citable, reachable. Then we also cover cover letters, responding to readers. So we'll talk kind of about the big picture of how do you publish an article. The Google course that I mentioned, we have resources, things that we mentioned in the webinars, we will post to that Google course, so you should have access to it. Some of the resources that we reference, we have in our own library at CSU Rates. So if there are things that you want to take a look at or interested in reading and don't have access to, please reach out. I am a firm believer in leading horses to water and letting them drink. Or teaching people to fish is another way of using a water metaphor for thinking about how we share knowledge and how it is that we share resources. These are not required texts. You do not have to read them to participate, but they are very useful. Some of them have new editions. For example, the Hillary Glassman Deal. I know that there's a new edition out of that one, and it's science research writing for non-native speakers of English. Super, super useful, even for native speakers of English. The kind of two key books that we build on are actually, it's one book, a second edition, which is Wendy Belcher's Writing Your Journal article in 12 weeks. And you could get the newer edition, but sometimes you can find the first edition, the one that's in white with the hand typing, a little bit less expensive. And that they're great little guides. And she herself is a social scientist, but it kind of bridges a bit between the humanities and the hard sciences. You can kind of translate between disciplines with her work. We will pull a number of our practice exercises and the process by which we're talking about submission. We'll pull a lot from Belcher's work. The genres that we talk about, we'll mostly be talking about writing an article for submission to an academic journal. However, there are many things that we call articles or that are very similar in kind of their requirements for submission. So I'm thinking about edited chapters in a book, for example, that has to go through editorial review and then perhaps peer review before being published at a press. So there's some things that we could talk about that are very similar. And so if you're working on a different type of academic or research document that is going to be going out for publication, feel free to jump in. And conference proceedings, for example, technical science reports, yep, you're more than welcome to join. Again, this is a non-credit course, but our goal is to have regular productivity and regular support. So we have this kind of value of attending for each week. And so they're topical conversations that have high value added in terms of their content and then also the conversation. And the value of the writing labs is really about accountability, being able to spend some time on your project, to be able to, if you need conversation, to move into a breakout room and have a conversation either with colleagues who are on the call or with me or Kimmy or someone who's there. So there's various ways that you'll want to keep attending through the semester. And we all know that at some point during the semester, usually it's somewhere around October-ish or November, it really just becomes harder to ante up. And I think that we start off thinking our projects and our semesters are just amazing, at least I do. And then eventually there's this kind of weariness that sets in. And there's a place where we start to question like, oh, can we do it? How are we going to do it? Is this worth it? And then we rally to the cause. This is a little graphic by Austin Kleon. And it's just a reminder that these may be how we experience a semester or how we experience writing an article for publication or other projects. But that ultimately, if we're just really steady, going back to that kind of regularity of through the semester, that kind of just showing up regularly makes a lot of sense. Austin Kleon talks about it as being boring. He's like, be boring is the only way to get things done, you know? Project writing pipelines, for example, they can be really helpful if you have multiple projects. And if you have multiple projects going on, um, please feel free to jump in. Occasionally, we'll be talking about juggling for multiple projects, but this is less one of those kind of tactical workshops. It's much more geared towards, we'll be talking about an article in general, so what you're writing. But it's really, if you are juggling multiple projects this semester, take a look at Erin Furtalk's, Chronicle of Higher Education piece, My Productivity Pipeline. She does a great job of detailing out how it is that you can have multiple stages for your projects. And some of you are already doing that in your labs and have multiple projects ongoing, but still it can feel a little bit of a juggle, and it's nice to hear how people do it well. Because I think the process itself can feel a little like, oof. You start in one and dead end in another and start in another. And I know that our conversation with the folks in the webinar itself, many of them have 3 or more projects that they're currently working on. So we're going to try to give us a regular space on Mondays in the afternoon to be able to do regular work, streamline it out a little bit. There's some corresponding CSU Rights resources to this course, so take a look at our schedules online. Our goal is for us to keep our routines and systems simple so that we can allow for our writing itself, the ideas that we're working through, to be complex and nuanced, but also accessible, citable, and quotable too, right? So you want your research and your scholarship to be complex. So we look forward to working with you as you write this semester. Reach out with questions. We're glad you're here. Look forward to working with you.